Good morning everyone, today we're checking out a brand new video from True Green 7 about what if Pokemon evolved 10 times. Let's hop in and see what he has to say. Because I wonder if this is gonna end up like that ROM hack someone made where Pokemon can just keep evolving like 3 or 4 more times. It's actually kind of awesome, the design.
Hey guys, Ron here, and on this
And
channel we've been testing the limit of Pokemon designs for years. But this video may be the biggest challenge I've undergone yet. I designed a Pokemon evolutionary line with 10 stages. I created my own Pokemon that evolves more times than any Pokemon in history. It took me longer to draw this line out of any in my life. It was definitely tougher than you can imagine because, like any good evolutionary line, I made sure that all 10 stages iterated on the last and set up the next stage, all while being distinct Pokemon on their own, with individual concepts and designs. I didn't want, let's say, my 5th evolved form to look like my 4th one, but just with more spikes or something. I had to pace myself and make sure that each family member had a reason to exist and wasn't redundant. That's why carefully planning the design and concept of each Pokemon was crucial. So if you're excited to see this journey and the lore of this exhilarating line, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of stuff. Make sure to check out all my other Fakemon videos and consider becoming a patron or becoming a member to give this channel, more opportunities to do experimental stuff like this. Now let's begin by making a Pokemon that evolves 10 times. But before that, you know what's better than the number 10? 11. And it just so happens to be the 11th anniversary of today's sponsor, Summoner's War Sky Arena. And to celebrate, I'm going to be designing a Fakemon based on this popular mobile turn-based RPG. This is one of the OGs with 240 million downloads worldwide. And I personally know my viewers will love this game because you can summon and collect over 1,000 monsters, each with their own abilities and strengths. I know you love that kind of stuff. Build and customize your own team of monsters to suit your playstyle and strategy. And with regular updates and in-game events, the gameplay is kept fresh for new and experienced players. It's free to play, and with the 11th anniversary events, players can receive up to 200 free scrolls, each of which are used to summon monsters. You'll also be able to collect a total of 10 monsters from previous Hall of Heroes for your own customized 10 weeks of Hall of Heroes, which is basically a specialized dungeon where players can earn summoning pieces for a specific 4-star monster. And once you're hooked, the game's variety of PvE and PvP content, like Tower of Ascension, Rift Raid, and World Arena, you'll be entertained for years. But since Summoner's War has a plethora of amazing monster designs, I thought I'd take one of my favorites, the Heart Magician Celia, and turn them into a fairy steel-type mon named Celestrum, the melody Pokemon.
I like
Celestrum uses the strings on their tail to create powerful melodies that put their opponents into a dreamlike state. While refined and elegant, this Pokemon is quite fierce and relentless in battle. They will never allow their foe to gain the upper hand. And if you want to see the monster that inspired Celestrum, please click the link in the description and download Summoner's War Sky Arena today. It will really help the channel out. So, what is going to be the basis of my line with 10 Pokemon? By the way, I kind of lied. There's actually going to be 9 evolved forms, because technically it's going to be a family of 10, but only 9 of them will evolve with one basic stage. I don't think you guys care, honestly.
Yeah, no, we get what you mean, though.
What kind of concept or animal could inspire
10 total stages, 9 evolutions.
Something that will change so many times. After all, most animals can justify like 3 stages, like a child, a teenager, an adult. But I'm gonna stretch those stages in life, while also combining it with an animal I believe has one of the most stages of their metamorphosis, the jellyfish. This thing has like 8 stages of life, including the egg. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make an entire line that represents 3 things though. The life cycle of a jellyfish, the ages of a human, from birth to death, basically.
That makes sense.
And I'll even include subtle references to the different ages of humanity, like the Stone Age, all the way till modern times and even the future. That way I'm not just drawing a jellyfish. A subtle theme will also be that each Pokemon will be more anthropomorphic as they evolve, just so it feels like we're really leading up to the future of humanity in this theme, but you'll see what I mean. It's not like it's gonna look like a human. Let's finally design the first stage. Pokemon number 1 will be based on a jellyfish egg, a human fetus, and the Stone Age. Now, Ron, how in the world would you add some kind of Stone Age element to this pure water type that is most definitely squishy and not hard as stone? Well, I'm basically gonna give it a weapon, a spear, the number 1 Stone Age tool. It has the ability to manipulate the shape of its water film, making it sharp like a spear. That pattern on his forehead is what alluded to its hydrokinetic abilities. Say hi to Ovamote, the potential Pokemon from Ovum, which means egg, and Emote, which, since this dude kind of looks like a little emoji and is very expressive. Ovamote drift in the ocean without a care. They are able to manipulate their water-infused membrane, allowing them to protrude sharp, pressurized water from any point around them. They communicate by controlling their membrane, making various quick shapes as responses. Since this was the first stage in the line that is basically the weakest Pokemon in existence...
you know what? Gonna move myself down, that way y'all can see the shinies. No one's really gonna care about the size
to give it, room for its stats to grow 9 more times, I also had to make sure it was as simple as possible without any superfluous design elements, so I could, again, have room to add elements as it evolves. All in all, cute Pokemon. Can't wait to see its evolved form, which I will make right now. Now we're making a stage based on the Planula stage of a jellyfish. Its theme is that of an infant child, so it's crawling around. It'll have traits inspired by the Bronze Age of humanity, especially the spears and helmets of specific soldiers at the time. A pointy head will also help transition into the next stage. Check out Planulittle, the intrepid Pokemon from Planula and Little.
I like
this Pokemon crawls on the seafloor and filters food to eat using its membrane, which points at the direction in which items can be found. It is very diligent and can cover much ground without sleep. It is collecting enough energy for its more sedentary evolved form. A very smooth evolved form, while still having pretty much everything that the previous form had, but in different proportions.
Yeah.
I kind of began laying out the groundwork for the stuff you'll see throughout the future designs, like those colored cheeks. If this line consists of only 3 designs, this would probably be a contender for the actual first form. It's pretty much gathering food and doesn't sleep because its evolved form won't be moving much. The third stage is based on the Polyp, the form of jellies that stick to the ground and begin reproducing. It's gonna represent a human child too, with its more wild hair and innocent attitude. It's no longer a baby, so it can stand up and move, albeit very slowly. Its subtle traits are based on the Iron Age, during the latter half of which chainmail was first developed. It's definitely more of a stretch, but the colors and simple designs make it look like an artifact from more than 2,000 years ago. I thought of its patterns as something akin to gilded armor, and perhaps, patterns on a pot. This is Palip, the embedded Pokemon from Pal and Polyp. These friendly Pokemon stay in one place in order to reserve energy as they grow rather quickly. They are squishy yet rather resilient. Their neck can stretch quite far in order to grab drifting food. They oddly do not use excessive force and will often decline to battle. Palip are quite wise for their age. I've always thought of making a Polyp Pokemon, so this is pretty fun.
Yeah,
a good transitional Pokemon between the early stages that look nothing like a jellyfish and the next form that'll begin to show, some traits that all the other evolved forms will begin to have. It's also coincidentally kind of looks like a chess piece, which aids in tying it with the future forms that'll look quite royal actually. Now I'm designing the 4th form based on the budding Polyp. It's gonna represent a preteen or even early teen, so it'll be a bit gloomier than Palip. A bit emo with tentacles on top and the bottom. Its bottom half will look a bit like robes to emulate the classical era, almost, Roman type clothing.
The Roman
Behold, Drabud, the stalwart Pokemon, a water psychic type, from Drab, meaning faded and dull, and Bud. Drabud have used up all their energy and must stay rather still. Through constant meditation, they have developed psychic powers. The tentacles on their head move on their own in order to defend Drabud. I say this is the end of the first half of the line, since the next evolved form will be the true middle stage in terms of design, but honestly, every single one, so far, does a good job of transitioning into the next, while the rest should be undergoing more drastic changes to represent far wider ranges in human lives. The last few that we've seen all represented a human from, age 0 to 10, while the last few will represent entire decades in just one form. Now I'm designing Form 5 based on the Ephora stage of a jellyfish, where one segment of the Bud Polyp becomes a free-flowing, underdeveloped jellyfish that will eventually become an adult Medusa. I'm making its tentacle hair even more moody. It's our mid-teen form, but since it's also gonna represent medieval Europe, I'm making it look like its tentacles form the look of a Google, those hooded shoulder-length capes that medieval peasants wore. This will help transition into the clothes of the next form, which, it's not real clothes, it's just how it looks. Now that it's full-on psychic, I want the spots on its body to look like they glow a bit. Here is Ephorogue, the free Pokemon from Ephora and Rogue. Now that this Pokemon's tentacles are developed enough, it is no longer bound to the seafloor and will journey throughout the ocean. It hypnotizes predators with the lights adorning its body and stuns small prey
got a stat total of 399
with mental blasts. This one is definitely
And
my
solve
favorite so far, and probably the
170.
most Pokemon-like. As in, I took way more liberties when combining it with the other elements, while the previous forms very much just look like the jellyfish stage that inspired them, with a few more embellishments. They'll get more and more complicated from here on out as they get stronger. Effirogue is practically the middle stage of this entire line. Now I'm making a form based on a young Medusa, basically a straight-up jellyfish that is
here we go.
almost fully formed. This one represents the early Renaissance now, and a neat little theme that we have going on is that the previous form was a peasant while this one is a princess. It's a late teenager, basically officially an adult but not yet responsible for anything. I'm also adding an extra hidden thing
Alright.
that will make sense in the last two forms, but keep an eye out for any additional developments. Technically, it started in the previous form, but it's too subtle for you to even tell yet. Its neck resembles that ruffled collar called a ruff. We were already alluding to that in the
okay.
previous two forms, and now it's fully developed before unraveling in the next form. I invite you to pay attention to how little attributes like that develop over the next few forms. Make way for Royalure, the noble Pokemon. From
Royal
lure, and allure.
Alright.
Through hypnotic lights, Royalure has made their way up the food chain and rules over the seas. They love to dance with potential partners and will battle with those who seem fit to rule alongside them. Royalure are confident to the edge of arrogance, but secretly yearn for an equal. I'm glad we're finally getting the fully fleshed out Pokemon.
Good
now.
equal.
This is the first one that could be its own thing and even a very weak final evolution if this was any other video. But no, this represents the limit of what a middle stage Pokemon would look like, while the next form will
That
be
makes
our
sense.
first viable, fully evolved form. Now we're designing an evolved form based on a straight up jellyfish, but at this point it's basically
here we
so
go.
anthropomorphic that the jellyfish aspects are taking a backseat to the fact that it's
To the
based on a
hat.
Victorian lady in her 20s. Maybe even specifically modeled after an antebellum Southern belle from America. The ruffles in the previous
That's
form
pretty
become a
good.
collar, the tentacles that look like a dress in the previous form become more uniform, even the part of the dress that extends from the collar to her behind is simply her tentacles, and her true tentacles, which look like hair, become longer, finally looking like an actual jellyfish,
I
if you were
like
to
this
discount all
one.
the women aspects. That hat is simply the bulbous part of a jellyfish. It's called the umbrella or bell, which makes this
Oh.
entire Pokemon a pun on the word belle, which could mean the head
Oh.
of a jellyfish or belle as in a beautiful woman. At this point, it starts getting
A Southern Belle.
attributes of both
I love it.
Nihilego and Jellicent, both snazzy looking jellyfish Pokemon, so I embraced it and figured that jellyfish in the Pokemon world are related and look like fancy humans. Let me introduce Bellagoon, the reserved
I
Pokemon
like
from
this.
Belle, Bella, which means beautiful, and Lagoon, not Goon. After a Royalure has defeated all her suitors in battle, Royalure evolves into Bellagoon. They leave the ocean in search for worthy partners. At
Wait,
night, they
they
float
leave the
around
ocean?
small bodies of water and are often mistaken for ghosts of long-gone maidens. Bellagoon are fairly hygienic
Oh.
and will clean murky water. They will often drive out humans from polluted lakes and ponds. This stage very much represents what would be the final evolution if this was a normal 3-stage family. But now this Pokemon will
This is
begin a
actually still pretty
transformation
good.
and will become more powerful than the average Pokemon and even act like it. Now I'm making
Ooh,
a jellyfish that's
506.
lived long and combining it with a mid-century woman, basically a modern woman but not quite close to the time that we live in today. Anything
Like
between
one
1950s
from the 1950s or something.
to 1970. You might have not noticed, but I've subtly
Oh.
included legs on these Pokemon since Effirogue, and since they were developing inside the dress of Bellagoon, they're finally revealed. In reality, they are still tentacles, even the dress is still technically tentacles. I suspect she has about like 16, including her hair tentacles and legs. But most importantly,
Probably a
her
lot.
hat or bell is becoming more pronounced. I wonder what that will lead to. May I present
Sounds like an
Tentacurse,
umbrella.
the lofty Pokemon. After spending much time on land, Tentacurse has begun to abandon the hope of finding an equal, and have become fairly egotistical. Tentacurse only care about themselves and will manipulate others to get what they want.
Weirdly, this is now giving off some like Cruella de Vil vibes.
When their authority is challenged, they unleash every single ounce of psychic energy they have. They never hold back, and will swiftly showcase their maximum strength to quash any opposition. Only the strongest trainers who have raised Tentacurse since birth can regain the respect of a Tentacurse. This Pokemon is ailed with frequent headaches. Now that Tentacurse is as powerful as some of the most powerful non-legendary Pokemon, it's time to keep her in check. We've already exhausted the beautiful lady element. Now we're gonna develop legendary level Pokemon. Here's the concept. The
Alright,
bell
here
that
we go.
became her hat is now taking over. Her previous form was
Oh.
too ambitious and haughty, and incredibly ruthless and arrogant, and deserves to be reined in by
So the bell itself is also conscious.
the tentacles. Since it kinda looks fishy that there was a woman inside this jellyfish, it's time to reveal that the hat was the jellyfish this entire time. Now that this Pokemon represents our current times, the information age, The internet exists, and it's not pretty. It's taking over our lives. This woman, quote-unquote, past her prime, represents our dying civilization. Her tentacles look like tangled wires. The patterns on her face were all leading to this face that looks more like a skeleton or skull. She is near death. God, I hope people actually watch this video, because this is a little too much effort for a jellyfish Pokemon line.
Oh yeah, this
The head now resembles the bell of a Man-O-War jellyfish. Since they're not actually jellyfish, it's called a pneumatophore. There's also a bit of alien vibes to this, which ties into the final form. Beware, Karmadusa, the influence Pokemon.
Okay.
After biding its time and witnessing Karmadusa...
Damn, it's 9th form and has a stat total of 640 of 14.
...his moral demise.
Damn.
The bell atop this Pokemon is now in control and has gained authority over a majority of Karmadusa's tentacles. This Pokemon can now only be found high in the sky where nobody can touch Karmadusa. Floating in the air, this Pokemon attacks all that approach its airspace. I love this, and, you know, tragic Pokemon are always interesting, and hopefully it has just the right amount of detail to finally be a legendary Pokemon. I originally envisioned this to represent a human before death, or even death herself, and was gonna give it to the last form, but I thought the final form should represent the future and what may come after death or humanity. So let's finally see the final evolution. So this whole time, I was leading to the bell taking over and being the final stage after killing a false form. It represents the future and even astral projection. Possible humans in the future, or galaxies. Anything that has to do with space or the mind. A pure representation of the...
So, what happened to the human-esque body?
Psychic type. But the most important aspect is the fact that some jellyfish can become immortal and turn back into polyps. So this form represents the cycle actually returning to the beginning instead of ending. It looks like a happy giant space baby, but most importantly, it is the form that most resembles the second stage, Planulittle, before becoming a polyp. Its tentacles are even reaching towards the ground, as if it's about to drill into the sea surface and become a polyp again. Behold, Ebula, the Ascended Pokemon, from Nebula and Ebb, the word that describes the flow of water back into the ocean.
11 feet tall and a stat total of 670!
The final and true form of this line is Ebula. It floats above the earth, absorbing cosmic rays for decades. It is perpetually smiling. After living for a century, this Pokemon has been observed to descend back into the ocean depths. Some say it uses up all the energy that it has collected in order to revert back into a polyp and begin a new, more virtuous life, hopefully without repeating its previous mistakes.
Damn.
That's right, my dudes. While polyps are naturally pacifists and wise as they develop their psychic powers, some of them are like this because they used to be an Ebula who has renounced conflict and reverted to their childhood innocence. I really hope you enjoyed these forms. Let me know which was your favorite and if you noticed any small details between evolutions and forms. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed and want to see other similar videos. Maybe suggest some in the comments.
Alright everyone, that's going to be the end for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. And I'll see all of y'all next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.